Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to create an assembly using multiple different blocks. So you're going to want to first download each part from Canvas. So that will be your base, part 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then kind of have that in-class model PDF available to you because that's how we're going to see how to create our maze. Another thing that's going to make this easier is go and just create a new folder. Name it your lecture work, your last name. And I'm just going to leave it anywhere on your desktop or your computer or your flash drive, just so we're ready in the future to use it. So you'll open up SOLIDWORKS. You're going to come up to the new icon, select new. We're going to select the assembly and then hit OK. Your assembly window is going to just pop open. It's going to have over on the Feature Tree Manager a begin assembly. You can browse here, or most of the time your browse and file locations will just pop open where you can now utilize those parts. So we always want to start with that base component. So I've given you a block called base. That's going to be our base component. So I want you to select base and open it. Now the key thing that you need to remember is do not just place this anywhere in your part document window. For your base component to be connected to the origin, which is the #1 factor we want to focus on today, you need to hit the green check mark. This is automatically going to align the origin and coordinate system of your base component to that of our assembly. So if this was a different part and it was rotated a little differently and not in its natural position or how it was going to be used in an assembly, we would want to change its rotation, add in some constraints revolving around the origin. So make sure your base component is in, it is attached to your coordinate system. If not, you can always add in a relationship yourself between the origin of this assembly and the origin of your part. As we build these different parts for our assemblies, you're going to notice that as we bring them in, the parts are going to be listed on your Feature Tree Manager. You can hit this flyout arrow and it's going to show you the features and how that was built. So you could select the origin here, the origin of your assembly, and add in a coincident relationship if you are not attached to the origin. But as long as you just select the green check mark for your base component, it's going to attach it to that coordinate system. So now that I have that in, I'm going to come up and I'm going to insert the remaining components. So under that assembly tab, go to insert your components. You can browse for them or that window will pop up again. Now this is just a user preference, but since I am only working with 5 parts total, I'm going to bring in every individual part at the same time. I kind of like working with 5 to 10 parts at a time in my part document window. However, when you work with large assemblies and maybe you have 50 parts, you're not going to want to bring all 50 of them in at once. So make sure that you're comfortable with how many parts you're bringing in and working with at a different time. I'm going to hold my Control key down, select parts 1 through 4, and then hit Open. Now you're going to see them listed as your open documents for your parts or assemblies to insert. But when you move your cursor around that part document window, it is only going to appear as one part at a time. Now, since our base component is already attached to the coordinate system, I can just click anywhere for these other parts to be placed in the part document window. I do not have to worry about hitting that green check mark. So we're going to start on the left end and work our way over. So if we look at our PDF, we can see on the left that we have this gray first block. It is flush with all surfaces of our base component. So we are going to want to add in mates for this front face, mated to the front face of our base component. Our underneath face for block 1 is going to be mated to this top face of the base component, and then the side face of the block and the base component are going to be mated. Remember, you want to try to mate the whole face to each surface as you go. This is going to just kind of help with any errors. So we always want to move our components kind of to where they are going to be placed in relation and change their orientation if we need to. Then we're going to select on that assembly tab this paper clip icon known as your mate function. And once you select it, you're going to have this window open up. So we're going to select the faces we want to add in our mates. I'm going to start by doing the top face of my base component. Hold the roller of your mouse down, select the bottom face of block 1. You can kind of see that slight movement of it moving into place. So now those two surfaces are going to remain touching one another. So that block can move back and forth and all over, but it's always going to have the same distance as it does now, which is 0 between those two surfaces. SOLIDWORKS normally picks the mate that's going to work best, so we are going to leave that coincident mate, and then I'm going to hit the green check mark. Now I'm going to mate the front face of block 1 to the front face of that base component. You can see it slide into place there. It's going to be a coincident mate, and I'm going to hit OK. Now the last mate is going to be my side faces. So I'm going to select the side face of block 1 and the side face of my base component. Again, it's going to be a coincident mate, and then hit OK. Now I'm just going to exit out of the mate so you can kind of see that as we've added in these mates, you can hit this flyout arrow, and you're going to see every mate listed in the order it was created. If I hover my mouse over those mates, it highlights on my assembly where they are placed. So this is a good thing to kind of look at, make sure you have the correct mates. Recall from lecture that most parts are going to need at least 3 mates to make them fully defined. Double check that your component is fully defined. When you click on it, you'll kind of see that note. The component's fully defined, it cannot move. You can try to drag it away. Okay, so that one's good to go since we have no movement. Now we're going to move on to block 2, this green block. So I can see that the bottom face is going to be mated with the top face of my component, my base component. That I have a distance mate between the outside faces of block 1 and block 2. And I also have a distance mate from the back face of block 1 to the back face of your green block. Make sure that distance mate is going to be applied to the back face and not the front. So to begin, I just go back up to that paperclip icon for mate, and I'm going to start with the top surface of my base component, rotate my model around, and select the bottom surface of that green block. That is going to be a coincident mate. I'm then going to hit OK. Now I'm going to add in my first distance mate. So I'm going to select this side surface of block 1. I'm going to select the side surface of the green block. And it's automatically going to kind of want to add in a coincident relationship. But I want to put in that 1/2 inch distance. So I'm going to scroll down to where the distance mate is, select it, so it allows me to put in a number, and I'm going to put in 0.50 and hit enter. You can see that part slide into place. Go ahead and hit that green check mark. We're now going to do another distance mate between the back face of block 1 and the back face of our green block. Scroll down, select that distance mate, and again this is 0.50, and then hit OK. You can try to move your green block around and you're going to see that it is fully defined. So now looking at the pink block, we can see that it's going to have a distance mate between those two side faces of 1 inch from that green block. That its back edge is actually mated to the edge here, and also notice that we're kind of going to be working with the longer side, so it is tipped up, so that shorter side will be hanging off. We do have this 45-degree angle. So this is where it's going to be nice to actually just use the edge, an edge of our base component, to create a mate, because we do want that hinge movement. Normally you want to use just the whole face and surface so you can prevent that, but in this case it is what we want to add in. So with your pink block, we're going to be working, I'm going to add in the back edge mate first. So I'm going to select this bottom edge of the pink block, make sure that it is kind of that long edge, and then I'm going to select this back edge of my base component. It is going to be a coincident mate. I'm going to hit OK. I'm now going to add in my distance mate first, and then we'll do that angle mate. So I'm going to select the outside face of my green block, this inside face of that pink block, scroll down to my mate selections and select the distance mate, put in 1 inch, hit enter, and then hit your green check mark to add it in. So now you can see this part, it can only rotate around, it cannot slide back and forth. So we just need to add in that angle mate. So the angle is 45 degrees between these two faces. So I'm going to select the top face of my base component, that bottom face of that pink block. So notice how it kind of hangs over if we do that coincident mate. Scroll down on your mate selection and select the angle mate and type in 45. Now you don't need to specify your units because these parts were made in inches. So SOLIDWORKS automatically sets your assembly into inches since those are the same units our parts are using. Once you've added in 45, go ahead and hit that green check mark. And at this point, go ahead and exit out of your mate selection. You will now see that you have 3 coincident mates for block 1. You have a coincident and 2 distance mates for block 2. Then you have a coincident and a distance and an angle mate for block 3. None of those can move now, so we only have this last block. So if we take a look at our drawing, we cannot see that red face. So we're going to assume it is that back face that we're unable to see. So I need to rotate that block around. The end faces are flush with one another. It's attached to that bottom edge with its edge, and we're going to add in a parallel relationship just so it will be straight on our model. So I want to begin by rotating my part. I cannot add the mates in as it is placed now because it's not going to manually rotate that red face towards the back of this assembly. So I'm just going to come up to my assembly tab. Under Move Component, I'm going to hit that drop down arrow and select Rotate Component. And you're going to want to just rotate that block until that red face is kind of facing the back or that negative Z axis of our model. It does not have to be perfect, it just has to be closer to the correct orientation. Once you have that rotated, go back under your Assembly tab and select the Mate icon. I'm going to start by just mating this front edge of my base component. to the top edge of this block. It's going to be a coincident mate. Go ahead and hit OK. Now, this part can still move, so we want to make sure that we select the end face of our component to the end face of this block. That's going to be another coincident mate. Hit your green check mark. And we're still getting kind of that hinge movement of this part. So to fix that, we're going to add in a parallel relationship from the top face of our base component to the top face of our last block. You can see SOLIDWORKS automatically added in that parallel mate. And then go ahead and hit OK. Now you can hit exit. And once again, that component cannot move. You're going to see it states that it's fully defined on your bottom toolbar. So this assembly is complete. So now I want you to go up to File and down to Pack and Go. We're going to save this file as your Lecturework assembly. We're just going to save it within that folder you already made for your lecture work. Make sure you are naming your files correctly. For our components, you do want to save all of them. So the key takeaways are your base component must be attached to the origin. And when you submit any assemblies, you must submit every single part file that is in that assembly with your assembly. So when we go to the Pack and Go, it's automatically going to pull up every part used. You can browse and find that folder that we created, select it, and it's going to make sure that every file used in your assembly and the assembly file is saved. And hit yes to all. We're saving everything. Yes to those form tools. So you want to make sure every part is saved. Then, when you go into that Lecturework folder, all of your parts and assemblies are already in there. So Pack and Go makes this really nice. So now, before you submit, you're going to right-click on that folder once all of your files are in it. Go to Send To, and then a compressed zip folder. It automatically gives you that zip folder, and that is the one you will submit to Canvas. Have a great day.